economy is also burning high. Obviously, we're focusing on that because Ghana is in a debt crisis. Guess what? The World Bank has classified the country at a high debt distress level as it projects the nation's debt to gross domestic product, GDP, of some 104.6% by the end of 2022. Now, although government is banking its hopes on the austerity plan with the International Monetary Fund, experts fear that the Bretton Woods will require debt restructuring as preconditions for rolling out the deal with the people of Ghana. Official sources are disclosing to us that although Ghana urgently needs a bailout funding, obviously the funds may not be available until the first quarter of next year. As part of the interim solution, the former Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, who doubles as a finance expert and has immense experience in the banking and capital markets, is calling for a haircut on the part of government expenditure to cushion Ghanaians. Well, guess what? I'm being joined via Zoom now by Alex Mould, who is former GNPC Chief Executive. Good afternoon to you, sir, and welcome to The Pulse.
Thank you. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well, and great to be hearing from you at this moment. Even before we get to the conversation, Galamsey has been on the top burner, or the front burner, I should say. So before we get to it, I'd like to take your thoughts on what we're hearing from the National Communications Officer of the NDC. It appears that that would then be the official position of the opposition party. He's not willing to receive that olive branch, figuratively, stretched out by the president yesterday when he says, let's go bipartisan and deal with the issues of illegal mining. Why is it so hard for the NDC to cooperate with government when it comes to the fight against illegal mining?
I think it's double standards and double speak on the part of the president, and that is what I believe most of us in the NDC do not think he's sincere on the matter. To think about it, you are the CEO of this country, and it's not a surprise that Galamsey is going on to you. It should not be a surprise because you have your representatives in every district. You are in touch with the people. You know what is going on. We got some reports today from the minister stating that only 2% of the farmlands in the cocoa area are affected by Galamsey. So that means that the president is aware of every single site that is undertaking Galamsey. Now, I think from the NDC's perspective, we were quite disappointed in the president's address. For us, it was more of a show to let people believe that things are being done. He never stated exactly what was being done and how it was going to be effective. The president is aware of every single site. He's aware of every single license that has been given. I saw a report that said that the Mining Minerals Commission has about 5,000 or 3,000 applications for mining still outstanding, and that could cause people to take the law into their own hands and do things. So I think the mining sector needs to be reviewed. There's a reason why Galamsey is lucrative, and it's simply because the miners do not undertake the expensive feature of reclaiming the land and cleaning the environment. So I believe that if the government had come up to state, for example, that they're going to ensure that they look at every mining area and make sure the Minerals Commission gives licenses to people. The Minerals Commission will also ensure that people are abiding by their work programs. If you are prospecting, you are prospecting. You're not supposed to be mining. You're not supposed to be making money from it. You're supposed to be doing exploration work.
Right.
So it needs to be very clear. And also, I believe that they license independent companies to clean up, and the payment for this cleanup comes from the miners. A lot of people will think twice about going into mining because, in the end, what's happening is that the taxpayer is paying for the reclamation of
Right, and that's
for
what
the cleaning of the environment.
right, and that's what I want to get to, the implication on the Ghanaian economy, because you would be able to, I mean, with your vast experience, draw the link. Where do we connect the dots?
Well, it's quite simple. There's a reason why people are doing galamsey. There are no jobs in the country, the price that the government pays the cocoa farmer, for example, is abysmal. I just heard that we pay something like 20-something cents a kilogram, whereas what's it called? Ivory Coast is paying something like $1.20 a kilogram. I don't know how far that is true. I just got the report. I'm reviewing it to make sure. If there's that imbalance, you're going to have a moving towards Ivory Coast. And I think even the loan that we've taken, the $1.1 billion loan, we may not be able to service it. So the fact of the matter is that if there are no jobs in the rural areas that there are alternatives, like I'm saying, you're going to have people going to that. What we should do is do proper community mining, make sure that there are designated areas, make sure that the rules of engagement are very clear as to what is required of the mining companies. And if we do not believe that they will clean the environment or they will protect the environment, we should have independent bodies licensed to ensure that this is done. And we need to get everybody on board. We need to get it should be part of the KPIs, the key performing indicators of the district CEOs. We should have the all chiefs involved in this to ensure that they also have a say in what's going on. And I think there's a lot to be done. What I'm not hearing from the government is exactly what is being done. You can't fight a war unless you understand your enemy, what your enemy is doing. I think it's just lip service they are paying to the people of Ghana, and galamsey will continue, and our bodies will be contaminated, and we're going to see less farmland being used for farming, and it's going to affect the economy, and then we're not going to be able to be producing our food in a sustainable manner.
And Mr. Mould, if you just speak directly to the camera from me, I'd love that. Let's get to the economy. Some say that you were consistent in sounding the alarm bells when in August this year, you raised some concerns about how we're inching closer to completely depleting our forex reserve, which would later affect our standing in terms of our economy. How is it that government did not pay attention to you at the time you were raising these calls? And what do you suspect may have been taking place at the time?
Well, I don't think it's paying attention to me. I don't think government was paying attention to what the market was saying. This started last year, October, when the bond prices started dropping from 90 to 80, and this year continued dropping to 70, and it accelerated, and the bond prices in the capital markets now are between 35 and 40 cents on the dollar. I mean, anybody in the capital markets, anybody who is talking to the in the capital markets will understand what was going on. We didn't have to wait for Moody's or S&P to downgrade us. We were downgraded by the market already. The market is the pulse of what is going on, and they actually can predict because they have more information in a timely manner than the likes of S&Ps and Moody's. What surprises me is that the Minister of Finance and his team did not see these signals. And if they did see these signals, they did nothing about it. When we alerted them, they brushed it over, said we would go to IMF. And somewhere beginning of this year, by February, after looking at their budget, knowing that they wouldn't be able to make the budget numbers, looking at the gap in the financing and ability to go to the capital markets, we knew that Ghana was on a free fall and spiraling downwards. All they kept on doing was propaganda and letting the people of Ghana believe things were okay. Unfortunately for them, or fortunately for them, Ukraine occurred, and they could blame it on Ukraine. Ukraine had absolutely nothing to do with Ghana's free fall. Ghana's free fall started last year, October. They blamed COVID, which was in 2020. We recovered from COVID in 2021. We started seeing growth in the markets, but because they had not put things in a sustainable manner, we were not able to see the growth, and they were not able to control the spiraling downwards. You have to manage your expenditure. If revenue is a problem, the first thing you do as a company, and government is the biggest business in Ghana, you have to manage the expenditure. We saw lip service played again, saying that they were going to cut expenditure by 30%, and as a gimmick, they did not tell the people of Ghana that it was only 30% on their discretionary spend. When you have your debt service, which is mainly interest payments, not even amortization, and your the wage bill totaling over 70 billion, more than the revenue you're going to make, you know you are in a doomsday scenario.
Right. So I guess that's what's leading us to where we are today. But the widely held perception out there is that if you take a look at the Ghanaian economy, we've been described as a donor darling. The fact that we're always going back to the Bretton Woods. We've been there 16 times already. So how unique is it going back for this 17th time, knowing the government says, well, it's our only way out at this moment? What's so different or extremely bad about the decision now to go to the same place we've been 16 times?
Well, I don't think it's a bad decision to go to the IMF. Actually, it's the only decision you could make to go to the IMF, because we've never been in this position before. Never. The current position we are in, where our debt is almost 100% of our GDP, where we have a huge forex crunch. We've never been in this position where our debt service has surpassed our wage bill. So this is a different scenario, and don't let anybody fool anybody that this is the same as 2014, or it's the same as when we went HIPIC. We are in a bankruptcy mode. People should understand Ghana is in bankruptcy. That is where we are. And if you are in bankruptcy, any finance person or any accountant will tell you that we are in what we call debt financing. We have to talk to our creditors. We have to put in some austerity measures. We have to reduce our wage bill. We have to reduce our expenditure. We have to cut all the discretionary spending, and we have to realign things. The problem is we have a structural issue right now. So it is not just going to the IMF, but it's more of a look into the causes of our current predicament. And we need all the finance people and the economists working together to fix this problem. To fix this problem, you have to be sincere and true to yourselves. The debt that is being shown is actually less than the actual debt government has. Government has debt parked in the SOEs like GNPC, Ghana Gas, VRA, Electricity Corporation, and all of those areas. Either they are direct debts due to losses made in the past, or contingent debts, which are debts that the government will have to finance over time. So the predicament is far worse, and the debt sustainability analysis that the IMF is doing is going to reveal a lot, and which is good for Ghana, because we will know our actual position, and we have to work with the IMF to see how much and when they can help fund the gap that we have. Secondly, we need the IMF, more importantly, to take us to the creditors, the various creditors, because we are not credible right now. We need some credibility. And the IMF working with us is going to bring credibility for us to negotiate with our creditors, especially the multilaterals and the bilaterals creditors we have. I think the biggest problem we have right now is the local debt, the debt service of the local debt, and whether the proposed haircut will only affect the debt, the local debt holders, or it will affect the foreign.
We'll get to the solution shortly because you've been calling for that haircut approach. But government, and I'm sure you've heard this by now, has been consistent in making the argument that circumstances accounting for our decision to return to the IMF is not comparable to any other regime. Do you agree? When that refrain is made that COVID-19 and the Russian-Ukraine war is what's accounting for where we are now?
I agree that our going to the IMF this time is not comparable to any time because of the gross mismanagement that has occurred in this government. Like I said, we don't have enough foreign exchange to meet our foreign exchange demands. We don't have foreign exchange to meet our fuel demands. Because of our downgrade, most of the foreign banks have reduced the limit of exposure to Ghana. That means that we do not have trade lines to trade. We don't have enough lines to bring fuel into the country. Government has to give an emergency license out to international oil companies because the local BDCs could not bring in products to meet our demand. So an emergency license was given to the international oil trading companies to bring products into the country. And they had to give them some sort of comfort that they have the foreign exchange ready for them. I don't know if any of the IOTCs actually did bring products into the country. The foreign exchange we got from Africa Development Bank and also now from the syndicated loan is supposed to last us more than 3/4 of the year. It's not only for this quarter. And the market has taken that into consideration as well. And that is why the CD is now at 11. We are at 11 CDs to $1 as of today. And it is projected that by the end of the year, we could be close to 12 CDs to $1, mainly because, one, a lot of investors are taking their money out and the foreign exchange is going to convert the CDs that they invested in our local bonds to take their foreign currency out of the country. And two, there's going to be, we are entering the Christmas period. A lot of imports are going to come into the country, and there's going to be a run on the foreign exchange as well. So the Bank of Ghana and the Ministry of Finance have a lot of work to do to convince investors and convince the markets that there will be foreign exchange available.
Right.
But the holders of Ghana's debt, the trade debt, are the international banks. And once they have reduced their lines, it means that we don't have the credit anymore to be able to trade. And that will put more pressure on the city.
And in fact, this is where I want to just bring up your post one more time. A couple of days ago, you wrote on Facebook, and I'm just reading exactly what you put up there. That quote, if you are bankrupt with ideas of how to meet your debt service, and the only way by which you would want to reduce that, and we'll definitely get all of that, but it's on the screens now, clearly indicating that, and let me just read that one more time, that if you are bankrupt with the ideas of how to meet your debt service and the only way is by reducing people's savings, then you need to be fair and also institute savings. You need to be fair and also institute a haircut in government payroll as well. That was actually your post a couple of days ago, just before we moved into this month. By this statement, are you first of all, by the statement, suggesting the government is out of options on how to run the economy and by extension, this country? Is that what you were suggesting in that post?
The government was out of control of how to run the economy long ago. It's not currently. And that's why we're in this predicament. And they have no options. And that's why they have gone to the IMF, because the only option they have is to reduce our debt service. They don't have any options of increasing the revenue. They don't have any options, and they are in a corner where they can't do much. And the IMF is going to be their savior. But you see, most people don't misconstrue what the IMF does. The government has to bring in their plan, a performance improvement plan. And that performance improvement plan is what the IMF is going to look at to see whether it is sustainable and whether it can help the government get out of this predicament or not. Secondly, if the debt sustainability analysis shows that our debt is so high, the debt service is such a drain, it has shown over the years that countries that have been in our position have been asked to have haircuts on their debt service. That means that they will either reduce the interest payments one way or the other, and to reduce your interest payments, it means you are either reducing the principal or reducing the interest rates. It's easier to do that on the local side than the foreign side. Because on the foreign side, when you in the capital markets, you have a lot of groups that can take you to court, and it can be a prolonged situation. So the main option they would have, if the debt sustainability analysis shows that we cannot meet our debt service going forward, there will have to be a haircut. All I am saying is that the haircut, especially to individuals, stifles savings. Any country that does not have people putting money in savings and rather putting money in their beds or buying other assets like land and cars, that economy cannot grow.
Yeah, but in terms of practicality, what practical measures, talking about that haircut approach, what practical measures would you want to see government roll out?
Well, I don't know. The options they have are limited. Like I said, they have to reduce the debt service, and the only way you reduce debt service is to reduce your interest payments, and that is what they are saddled with now, and they have to do that. To do that, you have to have a haircut. So I know that a haircut is imminent. It's going to happen. The real question is, who is it going to affect? Is it going to affect the banks that have about 35% of the bond of the government security market? Is it going to affect the 11% of the individuals? Is it going to affect the 6 to 7% of the pension funds? Is government going to be selective who it affects? But what I'm saying is, and please listen very carefully, any government that does a haircut to individuals or will stifle savings. If you stifle savings, people are not going to put money in banks, and that is going to have a ripple effect on the economy, because the banks are the intermediaries for loans to these companies that need working capital. And if there are no funds to these companies are going to also fold. It's going to cause job losses. So the government is in a pickle, and I think they've run out of ideas, and they really need help. They should have done this, in my view, 2 years ago, around the end of 2020. They should have reviewed, cut the expenditure, especially on the discretionary spending, especially on the landmark policy programs that do not add anything to our GDP. They should have looked at the sectors that we should have invested in and encourage private investment in those sectors, especially in food, in agri, so that we do not have the kind of inflation we have now.
Let's come to the extractive sector, for instance. It's one of the critical areas of our economy. Of course, it should have been a blessing for us, knowing that such as a developing nation such as Ghana, we were blessed with gold, cocoa, diamond, bauxite, petroleum. Of course, you've managed some of these assets before. Yet there are concerns, for instance, from Guta, that the juicy parts of the Ghanaian economy, i.e. mining, petroleum, they've been sort of hijacked by foreign nationals, a reason for which we're not self-reliant. Do you share the same concern coming through from the business community?
I don't think it's been hijacked. I think basically foreign investors have had access to capital, especially financing from banks and from investors in their countries that the local investors have not been able to have. And as such, most of the Ghanaians are rather foreign investors, and that is why it looks like the foreign investors are predominant in these sectors, especially when it comes to the buying of gold and the export of gold. You find a lot of foreign companies that are dominant there. But when it comes to the mining, it's the Ghanaians who do the mining. They do the mining together with the foreign investors, be them Chinese or other nationals. So I don't think that there's anything stifling the local entrepreneurs from being in the mining sector, apart from the fact that access to finance in these areas is difficult, mainly because maybe the banks do not understand the risks or they're not comfortable with the risks in these areas, whereas the foreigners are able to get financing to do that.
And then there's the banking sector, very critical sector, of course, issues of payment of pensions as well, which are all at risk now. The government is carrying out some debt restructuring. It is inevitable at this time that we're going in for austerity measure. This is where, of course, some blame your political party, the National Democratic Congress, for partly bringing us to where we are today due to the underperforming banking sector when you were obviously in charge of the economy. Do you take responsibility, and by extension I'm talking about the NDC, whenever the conversation comes up, but that a reason for which we're not able to have liquidity in the system and our forex depleted is simply because you did not run the banking sector properly. You have expertise in that area and you've been out of power, you have hindsight. What is your personal assessment of that process?
First of all, I think it's quite disingenuous to blame the NDC. Actually, the NDC put a lot of laws and acts in place to help us in the banking sector. And we can see most of the reforms that have gone in the banking sector were actually passed in the NDC time. First of all, if you look at the cleanup of the energy sector, it was the NDC that put ESLA in place. ESLA is the one that is responsible for cleaning up the petroleum downstream sector and also part of the power sector. The NDC also put in place some other acts which has helped in terms of ensuring that banks had enough capital adequacy to do their business. Yes, maybe the banking sector, especially the inspectorate sector, would be better this time around to ensure that we identify the banks that are illiquid, the banks that have high non-performing loans, and things are put in place. A lot of things were put in place for those banks that were shut down. For example, there was absolutely no reason to shut down Heritage Bank. It was shut down not based on any banking infraction or inadequacy of capital or anything. It was just shut down for political purposes. Now, once you shut down banks based on that, you're going to have a systemic issue with the banking sector. There was absolutely no systemic issue with the banking sector when we left power in 2027. There were a few banks that, yes, they don't meet the capital adequacy, but what happens is that the Banking Supervision Division works a performance improvement plan with these banks. The central bank then isolates these banks and gives them liquidity so that they can come out of it. And that is what you do. You have to support the banks. Banks were supported in England. Most of the national banks were supported in England, or they became partially issue with the banking sector. Unfortunately, this government decided to choose the alternative, to shut down the banks. And something few these banks eventually has cost us 25 billion, and we hear there is even more to come. So the question is, why spend 25 billion when you could have actually spent 9 billion, brought all these banks to check, clean their balance sheets, and let them continue running? And the reason is simple, political. They had to close these banks down to clip the wings of this supposedly.
Yeah, but clearly there was a challenge. There was a challenge with the banking system. I don't think it was just solely a matter of partisanship, if you want to put it that way.
No, for example, I told you there was no reason to close Heritage Bank down. The other banks had programs in place. They had programs in place to fix their capital inadequacy challenges, their liquidity challenges. And what the central bank does is that the bank will isolate you, and the central bank will put you on watch and ensure that you do not violate any of the indices that they have agreed with. That is what the central bank does. And of course, if there are banks that cannot come out of the program, the performance improvement program or plan, and those banks definitely will have to be either absorbed by another bank or liquidated. But that was not the case. I don't recollect any case where any of the other banks could not have done, because most of the debt that these banks had were debt to contractors who were owed by governments. So if government paid these contractors, they would pay their loans, and we wouldn't have that high non-performing loans as it were. So the central bank should not be politicized. It should actually ensure that Ministry of Finance does the right things. A lot of debt is hidden. A lot of debt of government is hidden in arrears. And I am hoping that the debt sustainability program, the analysis that is being done by the IMF, is going to unveil all of this debt. We have over 10 billion in the power sector. We have over 10 billion here in the roads and the education sector, and in the health sector as well. So we're looking at something between 30 and 40 billion debt that is hidden, either in arrears or debt that the SOEs, the major SOEs have. And all of this, for us, is important that it's unveiled so that we know the actual debt position of this government. One more thing I would like to say is that the debt that is being projected at about 104% by the end of the year is actually far more than 104%, because they are using an exchange rate of about 9.6, which is Bank of Ghana's fictitious interbank rate, whereas the commercial banks are actually trading, not the black market, the commercial banks are actually trading and selling foreign exchange to the BDCs at close to $11 cedis per dollar. Now, why are we showing a 9.6 exchange rate that nobody is using in Ghana, not even the central bank? Why are we showing a 9.6 exchange rate? The only reason is to lower the debt position, because 50% exchange, and a move from 9.6 cedis per dollar to 11 cedis per dollar immediately will move our debt by almost 5%. So government is in the pickle again. We have to ensure that they do the right things. Before the IMF came, Bank of Ghana was showing an exchange rate of 8.5. As soon as the IMF came into town, you saw a jump from 8.5, 8.6 to 9.5, 9.6. Well, I wonder why the central bank all of a sudden realized that our exchange rate was 9.6. 1 week ago it was 8.5. That's a question we should all ask the central bank.
And we'll see if indeed we'll be getting some answers through. Alex, before I wrap up with you, obviously you belong to a political party, the opposition NDC, which is carrying out reorganization at this moment. What's your assessment of that process? And what do you see?
I couldn't hear.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me as well?
Yeah, I didn't hear the question.
Right, so I'm talking about your political party. Before we go, you belong to the NDC. That's a party that says they are, at this moment, carrying out some sort of reorganization for victory in 2024. The New Patriotic Party says it is bent on breaking the 8. What's your assessment of the reorganization process so far, and what chances do you see for the NDC going forward?
Well, the reorganization has started, and we're talking about reorganizing from the grassroots level, from the branches, to ensure that we get the right executives and who others are, we get the right executives at the branch level and at the constituency level, the regional level, and the national level to lead this party forward. Never have I seen such enthusiasm in the party as we see today in terms of the caliber of people who want to be branch executives, caliber of people who want to contribute to the party in terms of organization, in terms of structure, and in terms of leadership. So NDC is in a great place as we speak. We are united to ensure that we do our best to remove the NPP from government, to save this country, to bring in policies of the people, programs of the people, so that we can get out of the rot, the mismanagement going on, and the complete, utter neglect of good governance going on in this country.
Alex, when next the NDC returns to power, and this is on a lighter note, I guess we may be seeing you in one of the ministerial portfolios, right?
Well, that's for our president and the leadership of the party to decide whether, I am of the caliber to help them achieve it. But I will be playing a part. I play a part in every part in the Ashanti region, in Greater Accra, where I live as well, to ensure that we have a strong organization. We are building an institution that's going to last for a long time. We are attracting high caliber people into the party. We're making people proud to be NDC members, both from the professional area. We are allowing people to have a voice in the NDC, and we're going to continue doing this. So everybody has a voice in this country. We don't intend stifling anybody who wants to contribute towards the well-being of God.
I'm grateful for your time here on The Pulse.
I'm very grateful for this.
Right. So that's Alex Mould, former GNPC Chief Executive. You're watching The Pulse here on the Joy News channel. When we return, we'll talk about the flooding in the Ghana South municipality. The electricity company of Ghana is working hard to restore connection to that area. We'll tell you all about it when we get